Welcome back. This is the next part of the look at the Criterion Blu-ray collection. So we'll start off this time with the Qatsi trilogy, Nakoi Qatsi, Pau Qatsi, and Koyanis Qatsi. Directed by Godfrey Reggio. This is Criterion 639, and the years are Koyanis Qatsi from 1983, Pau Qatsi from 1988, and Nakoi Qatsi from 2002. So they're non-speaking films, purely visual, purely music. By Philip Glass did the scores for these. He worked closely with the director. The director came out of, I believe the director came out of the commercial world, so shooting television commercials. And he had explored this idea of, I think the story was that he was a monk at some point, and he, let's see, Reggio lived an ascetic life as part of the Christian Brothers, a strict Roman Catholic community. His adolescence and early adulthood were spent in silence, fasting, and prayer. Though over the years, Reggio gradually became disaffected, as he told me in an interview, and then there's a little bit of an interview. So he had long periods of time where he wasn't speaking, where he was fasting as part of his religious beliefs. Those held over to his commercial world, where I believe in some commercials he had experimented with using silence and just using the visuals purely on their own to tell the story or to get the message across. And then he decided that he wanted to take that a step further and film a movie. Koyanis Qatsi, I believe, translates to life out of balance. An unconventional work in every way, Godfrey Reggio's Koyanis Qatsi was nevertheless a sensation when it was released in 1983. This first work of the Qatsi trilogy wordlessly surveys the rapidly changing environments of the Northern Hemisphere. In an astonishing collage created by the director, cinematographer Ron Frick, and composer Philip Glass, it shuttles viewers from one jaw-dropping vision to the next, moving from images of untouched nature to others depicting human beings' increasing dependence on technology. Koyanis Qatsi's heterodox methods, including hypnotic time-lapse photography, make it a look at our world from a truly unique angle. So that kind of gives you the overview of it. It's one of those things, it has aged fairly well. I saw this many years ago, and it really impressed me. So when I found it for sale on one of the Criterion 50% off everything sales, I jumped on it immediately. I just watched them recently, actually just before Lillian was born, and we were staying at my mother-in-law's place. I watched them again. And it is really nice. It's a great film to watch. This one has aged for sure. They all have, but not in a horrible way. You can still, it might be a little heavy-handed now because there's been a few films kind of this style since. Manufactured Landscapes comes to mind first of all, which is also shot beautifully. Gambling Gods and LSD, which is a great one by a Toronto director, Peter Metler, I think his name is, which is really worth seeing. That one's a 3-hour one though. But it's sort of a meditation, I guess, on life as we know it, and how we've kind of, in his mind, become unbalanced as far as encompassing both nature and technology, and how we're kind of overrunning the world and that sort of thing. Pau Qatsi, we'll just have a read. So this is 1988. 5 years after his first movie, Godfrey is again joined forces with composer Philip Glass and other collaborators for a second chapter. Here, Reggio turns his sights on third world nations in the southern hemisphere. Forgoing the sped-up aesthetic of the first film, Paokatsi employs a meditative slow motion in order to reveal the beauty of the traditional ways of life in those parts of the planet, and to show how cultures there are being eroded as their environments are taken over by industry. This is the most intensely spiritual segment of Reggio's philosophical and visually remarkable Qatsi trilogy. Francis Ford Coppola and George Lucas presentation, it says there. Yeah, I mean, again, just sticking with a similar theme, you know, this is now, like it says, a look at some other cultures on the planet that are still kind of exist on their own, but some that are also being touched by the evil, the evil Westerners. And then finally, Nakoi Qatsi. Takes on the digital revolution in the final chapter of his Qatsi trilogy. Through a variety of cinematic techniques, including slow motion, time-lapse, computer-generated imagery, and found footage, the film tells of a world that has completed the transition from the natural to the artificial. Globalization has been accomplished. All of our interactions are technologically mediated, and all images are manipulated. From this virtual reality, Reggio sculpts a frenetic yet ruminative portrait of an era in which the cacophony of communication has rendered humankind effectively post-language. So 2002, 89 minutes. Again, just beautiful, beautiful films, and this is where HD works well for me. I think I mentioned it in the last video. When I first got my HD TV and sat down to watch a movie, I was so concerned that I'd made a horrible fucking mistake. The film didn't look anything like I remembered it being. It lost that kind of texture that some older films have. It was too crisp, and that crispness always reminds me in a bad way that I'm watching a movie. As I did mention before, I do understand that I'm watching a film, but I like that texture. I don't like the HD quality sometimes. I'm getting used to it, and it definitely does do good things when it comes to some of these older films, especially the noirs and stuff, where you really get kind of crisp blacks and whites. So it really does work. And this is another example where I think it does work. Especially, well, I mean, in all of them, but there's a lot of kind of landscape shots and things like that as you're entering a different part of the world, and those are beautiful on a big TV in your living room. You don't have to go to IMAX to get that kind of feast. Gonna put you down for 1 second while I put these back in the box, and I'll just finish off by saying again, pick it up. It's definitely, you know, it's funny, I've watched some of my videos. Every once in a while I watch them back, especially when I just put them up, just to make sure that everything worked out okay and it uploaded. And I'm really focused on the word definitely, and I'm really going to attempt to stop using it as much, because it actually irritated the shit out of me when I was watching a video just the other day. So that's something to work on. Broadening the vocabulary and not falling back on one word. So, now that you're inside my head about that, check this out. It's really worth checking out. And the other ones that I mentioned, Gambling Gods and LSD, I love Peter Mettler. Highly recommend that one if you're up for a 3-hour thing. If you're not, he's also got one called The Picture of Light, which is going up to Churchill, Manitoba, and attempting to film the Northern Lights. And it's not a wordless one, but it's an amazing film as well. I'd put it in kind of the same category as this set. So there we go. That's the Qatsi trilogy. Next up is The Game. And this one was from 1997, and it's a David Fincher film starring Michael Douglas and Sean Penn. Another one that I found on sale and that I had to immediately buy. when I first saw this film, it was one of those that really blew me away. I've always been a fan of Sean Penn, especially in his stance as a kind of, not an anti-celebrity, but he definitely doesn't like that kind of world. And I remember growing up always hearing the stories about, you know, Sean Penn has punched out this photographer as him and Madonna were getting their pictures taken or whatever. I loved those things because it must be just really invasive. And I know that if you're going to become a celebrity, you have to accept some of that, but it must still get really fucking annoying when, at the end of the day, you're just doing your job and it's something that you like. I really admire people that can kind of keep that separation. Love this movie. I thought it's great. I don't want to talk too much details about it because that would ruin it if you haven't seen it. Just stop the video now and rent it. Look for it on iTunes or whatever you use. And just give it a chance. It's really, really good and really inventive. Yeah, that's it. I don't know if I want to say anything about it. It still held up when I saw it again. As soon as I bought it, I think I watched it that night, or if not, the next night. And it still holds up. Sometimes, as I'm sure you know, some of the films and things from your youth don't always stand the test of time. Not that this was my youth, because I was, what, 24 at the time? Still really, really great. Yeah, I'm just going to stop talking about it right there. Let's just have a look through it. Dark, mysterious. Michael Douglas is great. Yeah, there's really not much bad about this. It's a really, really enjoyable movie. Really sucks you into this world. And I guess, you know, maybe that's goes with my kind of like of certain genres, because this definitely does. Oh, there, damn it, I said it again. This really bridges that gap in the film noir type of world that I love so much. These characters that are thrown into this world that they don't really have control of, and they're kind of just along for the ride, and all these things are happening to them, as opposed to, and they just have no control. They're desperately trying to get control of their world, and they just don't have it. Great, great stuff. So there we go. That's the game. We'll just jump right into special no longer pregnant lady friend and I have different tastes, as I'm sure every couple does. This was one that we completely agreed on. It's Cronos by Guillermo del Toro. Surprisingly enjoyable. 1993, 92 minutes. When we first threw it on and I saw the intro, it had that kind of late 80s, early 90s quality to it, like with the look and the style, that I thought, oh man, this is not gonna appeal to me. I'm not gonna get anything out of this. Well, I guess I gotta sit through it, you know, and I was hoping the same thing for her. So I hope she likes this. And we got a little further and I could see she was getting more and more involved, and by the end she really enjoyed it, and I actually had a pretty damn good time with it too. An auspicious and audacious feature debut, a highly unorthodox tale about the seductiveness of the idea of immortality. Kindly antiques dealer happens upon an ancient golden device in the shape of a scarab, and soon finds himself the possessor and victim of its sinister addictive powers, as well as the target of a mysterious American named Angel, which is Ron Perlman. Featuring marvelous makeup effects and the haunting imagery for which Del Toro has become world-renowned, Cronos is a dark, visually rich, and emotionally captivating fantasy. Ron Perlman does an interesting job in it. He's not my favorite actor across the board. I'm not particularly fond of him. I did like him in Drive, but that kind of he's kind of like a Gene Hackman to me. There is moments where I really enjoy Gene Hackman, The Conversation being the one that really stands out. But that kind of one-note actor where he's just kind of this brash asshole kind of guy, I don't know, doesn't sit well with me. I know somebody has to play those parts, but Ron Perlman strikes me as a kind of guy like that. That said, his relationship with his father in this movie, I think, is amazing. I really, really like the scenes with the two of them together, just their interactions, and you can see that kind of power struggle and stuff. I really think that that's really well done. And like they say, there's no doubt that it's a Del Toro movie. You can see him playing with some ideas. Mike Mignola artwork. You can see him playing with some ideas that appear later on. You can see him playing with like special effects, makeup and things. And let me try to get this booklet out of here. Here we go. And the other bonus is that there's a lot of fantastic extras. We'll have a look in a moment. The little girl is great. It was a surprisingly good movie. Like I said, when I first turned it on, it really looked like, oh, this is going to be horrible. The transformation of the main actor, too, is really well done. From an old guy to a young guy. Because when you first see him, there's something a bit off about his look, but it's apparent that he's just a younger guy that they've aged. And it still looks great. So you get the script, parts of the script, or the actors. Oh, here we go, yeah, so it's kind of an overview of the actor, of the character, rather, sorry. The Bible. And there's the last page there. Kronos. One of my favorite things on this was Gometria, an unreleased 1987 short horror film by Del Toro, finished in 2010 with a new video interview with the director. So great. He kind of talks about his interest in filmmaking and then shows an early short film that he did, which I thought was hilarious. It really reminded me of early Peter Jackson type of gross out, humorous horror stuff. Really, really cool. There's a couple of commentary tracks on here. I haven't actually listened to the commentary tracks. One with Del Toro, the other with producers. Who wants to hear what fucking producers have to say? Welcome to Bleak House, a video tour by Del Toro of his home office. Fascinating. He shows his home where a lot of the work happens, and he invites people over to work from his house and all the trinkets he's got around. So interesting. The interviews with Del Toro, Ron Perlman, interview with the lead actor, Federico Lupi. Yeah, so there you go, Kronos. If you like Del Toro, give it a shot. I don't think you'll be, excuse me. So there you go, Kronos. If you like Del Toro, I'd say give it a shot. I don't think you'll be disappointed if you haven't seen it. Is it as good as some of his other stuff? I don't know, it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about Pan's Labyrinth, no, it's not as good as that. If you're talking about Pacific Rim, I'd probably say it's a little better than that one. And I love me a giant monster movie. That one just didn't blow me away. Anyway, enough said about that. There you go, Kronos. Alright, everybody. So next is Kuroneko by Kenoto Shindo is the title of this one. First of all, it's a fantastic cover, especially the way when the light hits it, it seems like she just disappears in there. Really, really nice. So I've been re-watching my Criterion movies, and I just watched this one the other night. I haven't watched the extras yet. There's an interview with the director. There's an interview with a film critic, kind of going over Shindo's career. So this is a horror story. It's a ghost story. In this poetic and atmospheric horror fable set in a village in war-torn feudal Japan, malevolent spirits are ripping out the throats of itinerant samurai. When a military hero is dispatched to confront the unseen force, he finds that he must struggle with personal demons as well. So the translation to this one roughly is Black Cat. I think the original Japanese title was longer, and the translation would be like Curse of the Black Cat, I believe. So this is 1968, 99 minutes, black and white, and it's beautiful. It's so good, and again, you know, I'm sorry if I repeat myself too much on some things, but as I get older, and I think as people in general get older, horror movies, there's not much that's truly scary about horror movies to me anymore. When because I'm still a fan of going to see horror movies, and one of the things I do enjoy doing now, it's kind of a different enjoyment of horror movies. I haven't done it as much. I really wanted to, with the movie The Conjuring, go to the theater to see it kind of early on, and especially on a weekend when all kind of like the teenagers and 20-somethings are there on their dates, because I find that to be the fun part now, going to see a horror movie with a theater packed with kids who, for them, it is still new. The ideas presented are still new. They're still scary, so you get their reactions. I find that the most enjoyable thing about horror movies now. It really kind of helps bring you into it, the spirit of it a little more. But when I see a horror movie on its own, it really, most of the time, it doesn't work for me, because I've seen so many horror movies in my life that it seems like there's a lot of repeating themes and nothing original, and I'm really not crazy about like I don't mind gore in horror movies, but it seems like this kind of torture aspect, and I'm not going to use the phrase because I find it incredibly offensive, but the torture aspect in some of these horror movies, it just doesn't appeal to me. I understand it's an interesting thing. It'll be neat to see down the road what kind of writings come out of it, because I'm sure there's some research. I mean, with science fiction, when science fiction was popular, there's a lot of aliens invading, creatures on the loose, that sort of thing, Martians coming down, exploration of space type of fears that would have been in the society. So what does that say about the generation or us as a society where this torture type of stuff is really prevalent in horror movies? What kind of fear is that talking about that's kind of within our psyche? It's interesting. Anyway, tangent over. Since those kind of things don't appeal to me anymore, I find mood and things really appeal to me more, and just kind of a little bit more uniqueness and kind of oddity and stuff like that. And atmosphere especially, and this one is full of atmosphere, and really amazing atmosphere. And I think one of the things to make that so appealing, especially in this one, is the use of sound, dialogue, even that sort of thing, Foley type sound, footsteps walking, water rushing, that sort of thing. For the first 10 minutes of the movie, there's no dialogue. No character speaks, and we go through quite a bit of a setup. So not only is there no dialogue, in the first handful of minutes, we're introduced to some samurai coming out of the forest. They find a stream with some water. They rush to the water. In that moment, the only sound that you hear is one or two sounds of people drinking water, and they sound almost kind of like animals. They sound like beasts. They're acting like it, they look like it, so then the sound effects kind of do that. But you don't hear footsteps of them running. You don't hear much else. In the center is a house. We go inside the house, and it's two women, an older woman and a younger woman, eating. The samurai enter the house, and then of course it goes from there. So in this story, we have the female characters being attacked by the samurai. They eat all their food, and then they are raped and then killed. The house is burnt down, and that's not a spoiler. That's just in the first kind of 5 minutes of the movie. The rest of the movie is the women coming back to haunt the little village, and every night lure a samurai to their house where the younger woman tears his throat out, chews his throat out. And it sounds really grisly, it sounds really, wow, that's crazy, and to a degree it is, but it's that way because of how they use it. Again, the atmosphere is incredible when you're led down the path of this first samurai going. The pacing of a lot of Asian movies is very slow to begin with, and it really does well in something like this because you're really led by the hand with this samurai, and you just know something's going to happen. You have no idea. This atmosphere keeps building up. The creep factor, the way the sound is being portrayed, or used rather, really adds to it. When it finally does happen, it's shocking, and it kind of took me by, it didn't take me by surprise, but it definitely had an impact on me because it was used so beautifully. It was very strange, and the movie just kind of gets better from there as you're introduced to more characters, and you know, once the first one is killed, they spend about, I think, 15 minutes or so kind of showing more samurai meeting their demise, but each time it's a shorter segment. They just show you some highlights, and some of the tricks that they do with kind of dual layered film, like double exposures is the word I'm looking for, is incredible as well, with one of the ghost women doing kind of a somersault over top of one of the samurai. Is beautifully done. It's beautifully done. It's an incredible movie. I really, really enjoyed it. I know this director because I saw a movie called Onibaba that he did, and it's an earlier Criterion release. I'm not sure what number it is. I believe it's out of print. I don't own a copy. I wish that I did because I really loved it. And it has a similar theme. I think it was before this one. It has a similar theme as far as, like, there's these two women whose son has died. I believe he was killed by some samurai. I'm not sure. I can't remember that exact part, but I know that they're out to get revenge on samurai, so they dig this pit and they trap these samurai to then rob them and kill them. And the elderly woman gets more pleasure out of it than the younger woman, so she starts kind of turning into almost like a witch, and even her features get a little more grisly, I believe, throughout the movie. Really incredible stuff as well. And the behind the scenes on that was amazing because they built a lot of stuff out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, just the artistic value of it alone makes it impressive, and I definitely put this one right in there. He's a director. The only two things that I've seen from him, I'd love to see some more. Yeah, this one was beautiful. Really, really good. I can't recommend it enough if you're into or thinking of getting into some Japanese movies. This is yet another one that I think you do well to have a look at.